Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I apologize for being so late as than usual. I am your host, Nelson, here on this wonderful Thursday afternoon. And unfortunately for today, there were no games played, which really stinks because I would have really liked to watch some basketball, and there were no NBA playoff games last night, so makes it a little bit more difficult to figure out what I'm going to talk about. But we still have 5 segments as usual. So the first segment is going to be talking about the Boston Celtics, how they could possibly be the one of the best teams in NBA history. Now, in the second segment, we're going to do a quick playoff preview of Game 5 between the Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks. Then in the third segment, we are going to be looking at a potential Trae Young trade, seeing as they have the number 1 pick in the draft. There's a possibility that they might want to build around that pick, but we'll talk a little bit about that in the third segment. Then in the fourth segment, we are going to be looking at the WNBA and Caitlin Clark, as she dropped 30 points in the WNBA and still lost, surprisingly enough. But we also have a special 5th segment that we reveal at the end of the 4th segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCPodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the Boston Celtics and just how good they are. So I was in a meeting earlier, and we were talking about the Celtics. Now, if I remember correctly, it was said, that at least this is what they told me, that they were top 10 in point differential and one of the top 15 records in NBA history, right? So I did some stat hunting, and I went ahead and I used StatMuse. I recommend using that. It's a very nice website. And I went to see exactly where these Celtics ranked in point differential. And they were, let me see, 2, 3. They were in the top 5. They were literally just 5, so the bottom of the top 5, but still very impressive. And they had an average point differential of 11.34. Now, what that means is that basically in almost every single game that they played, they would win by an average of 11 points, and they would because, point differentials, so, that's the difference in points that they have with every other team. And that is being in the top 5 while at the same time having one of the best records in the NBA is very impressive. And it's nothing short of amazing. And the teams that are ranked above them right now in the point differential category are the 1971 to 72 Lakers. Let me just go ahead and look at this stat real quick. And the 1970-71 Bucks and the 95-96 Bulls. So, and also the 2016-2017 Warriors with Kevin Durant. Now, the 2016-17 Warriors were just 0.3 points off of the 2023-24 Boston Celtics. So, they were just slightly above them, but more or less they had the exact same point differential. 11, which is, that is a lot of points, obviously. And let me just go ahead and look at another stat real quick just to make sure before I say what I want to say. And yeah, so all the teams above the Boston Celtics, the 2016-17 Warriors, the 95-96 Bulls, the 1970-71 Bucks, and the 1971-72 Lakers, they all won a championship. Every single one of those teams has won the championship, and everyone else below them either has or hasn't. So it's and I say has or hasn't because the teams below them right here, there's we have the 2015-2016 Warriors that are just below them with 10.7 points per game differential. 10.7 point differential per game. That's what I meant to say. And those guys didn't win the championship. And also, the 2015-2016 Spurs, they also had a 10 point differential per game, and they also didn't win the championship. So it's like, sometimes they're guaranteed a championship and sometimes they're not. But those in the top 5, they've been guaranteed they've won a championship. And now that's all that's left is for the 2023-24 Celtics, this Celtics team right here, to follow suit. And if they do follow suit, I do think that they have a possibility of being one of the best teams in NBA history. Now, but are they the best? No. I'm going to just flat out say it right now. No. They're not going to be the best. They're not the best team in NBA history, despite the fact that they have so many stars and so much talent on their roster. Like, I believe this is the first roster in a long time to have excuse me. I believe this is the first roster to have multiple starters hit 100 3-pointers in the season. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and check to see if that stat is true, because I did see somewhere that they had multiple starters hit 100 or more 3-pointers, and that stat hasn't been repeated. So, with that in mind, like, the team, it sounds like they're a very good team, but why aren't they the best? Well, that's because, unfortunately, to me at least, they're not going to be the best in my opinion, but, in history, in due time, they might. But for me right now, they aren't considered the best, simply because of how they made it to the finals. I know I always discredit a bunch of teams and discredit the media for putting asterisks on teams and their accomplishments, but I am sorry. The fact that that there wasn't a single team that was healthy to go against the Boston Celtics is a bit concerning for me. That, I understand, one team, sure, you could let that slide. 2 teams, maybe, but all of them? Now, that's, no, I refuse. And the fact that the Pacers were still close to beating them in a couple of games, despite that, but, again, I don't like the idea of having asterisks, but when I look at when I think about the best team in NBA history, it's the 2016-2017 Warriors. It's that simple. There's no other team in the history of basketball that I think could beat that team. There is no team in the history of basketball that I think could beat that team in a 7-game series. None. 0. Because that Warriors team came within 1 game away from sweeping the entire league. That was something that has never been done in the history of basketball. No team in NBA history has ever swept the playoffs, in every single series. None. And the Warriors, they came 1 game away from that, and the 1 game where they lost was against LeBron James, who in my opinion is the greatest basketball player to ever live, and the team was just shooting the lights out in that game. And then they went ahead and destroyed them in Game 5 and in Game 4. So, but with that, actually no, they went and destroyed them in Game 5. Excuse me. But with that, and that team, with Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson, not to mention Draymond, not to mention Andre Iguodala, not to mention Sean Livingston, not to mention JaVale McGee, all of those players, they were just different. When you put KD on that roster, you can't double him. You simply cannot double Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant is already one of the more unguardable players that the NBA has ever seen due to his height. Now, add on to the fact that he's paired with 2 of the greatest shooters that the NBA has ever seen, and 2 of the greatest postseason shooters the NBA has ever seen. No question about that. They've hit the first and the second most 3-pointers in the playoffs for a reason, and it's just, there's no way I just can't envision a single team that could beat that team. Not to mention having Draymond, who was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and also having Iguodala, who won the Finals MVP, over Steph Curry, along with Sean Livingston, who was in the running for being a sixth man of the year, that lineup was unbeatable. Plain and simple. And I don't think that any team in the history of basketball can beat them. So with that, we are out of time for this first segment. It's a little bit shorter than usual because I started a little bit later. I apologize for that. But now we will go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about a quick playoff preview and talk about the Mavericks and the Timberwolves and their series. So I will be right back after this short break. So stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be doing a playoff preview between the Mavericks and the Timberwolves. So before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Really ups the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the playoff game that is going to be. And I say game because there's only going to be one now, unfortunately. And we've come to that point in the NBA season where there's going to be 0 games that are going to happen consecutively. And it's a really sad day for me because now it's just making life a lot more difficult, and it's making it way more difficult to figure out what to talk about. But aside from that, the Timberwolves, they're going to be playing at home against the Dallas Mavericks, and the Mavericks, they're up 3-1 on this series, and they were up 3-0 before they blew it in game 4 and couldn't get the sweep. So one of the concerns that I have for the Mavericks is if they don't win this next game, because if this series continues, this is just, for at least for Dallas, this is just adding more days where they can't rest. And the finals doesn't happen until, hold on just one second, I need to just find the date. Exactly. The finals don't happen until June 6th. So almost a week from now, they don't happen. Actually, literally a week from now, they don't happen. They don't start happening. So if this series continues for the next couple of games, like the game 7, if necessary, is scheduled Monday, June 3rd. So that would give them this will give them 2 days to rest. And then they would have to immediately play the Boston Celtics in the next series. While the Celtics have been very well rested by not playing a single game since, let me see, their last game was May 27th. So they will have a week and 2 days, not 2 days actually, a week and 3 days or 4 days of total rest compared to where the Mavericks, they will only have a couple of days. And rest is it's very, very important. like, how do I say this? So a lot of these NBA players, they value rest and they value just load management most of the time. Like, you won't see many players actively try to pursue a lot of minutes, and you won't see many, unless it's desperately needed. You won't, if they could sit out a game, they would gladly sit out a game. So resting is very important for NBA players and NBA stars. And if you don't rest it could throw you off your game. Like, obviously, playing back-to-back NBA games is very, like, it's straining for the body, and it's, like, very difficult for teams to win back-to-back games because they literally just came off of playing a game yesterday, and it's really difficult to do so. But, again, as I've said, as I said before, the rest is, like, very important, but at the same time, it could also, like, that 2-day stretch, it could also mean that the Mavericks are a little bit more warmed up, considering how they just came off of an intense playoff game, and the Celtics are just coming off of resting. Like, I believe there's, like, a pro and a con to resting your players, and, like, because, there are times where it's a possibility that the team could be a little bit rusty based off the fact that they haven't played a real NBA game since, like, a week or a few days from then. Like, again, rustiness is a thing, and we've seen several playoff series, like, ultimately, like, or at least in other sports as well, we see when the team doesn't play a consistent amount of games, it could throw them off of their, I guess you could say, mojo, for lack of a better term. And, it could affect the entire outcome of the series. So those are just the two little nuances that we have, like, going into the finals. But again, we do not, if this series continues going on, it also means that the Mavericks are risking putting more players at injury, because now we know that Derek Lively, he's been injured and it's, like, rumored to be questionable for this game. Like, I have no idea whether he's going to be playing. I have no idea if, like, he's been cleared. And, like, I'll update you guys in a short, just saying whether he's been cleared or not. But aside from that, we have no idea, like, who else could get injured, and just playing these games could put every single player at risk. And that is something that you do not want as a Maverick. And not to mention, like, on the Timberwolves side, same thing could happen for the Timberwolves. Now, I don't think the Timberwolves are going to come out winning this series, because in the entire history of basketball, not a single team has ever been able to win the series after trailing 3-0. That has never happened in the history of basketball, and I don't expect that to happen now. But we have to be open to all possibilities. Now, if that does happen, I mean, they could be risking everyone else of getting injured as well, and they would also have to be forced to play after only 2 games of resting, which could be seen as good and could be seen as really bad. But if you're the Dallas Mavericks, you want to close this game out as soon as possible. And it's going to be I don't think that the Mavericks, they should not allow the Timberwolves to win a single game. If they get another win, then it's going to be they're going to be in that danger zone. I mean, because you don't want the Timberwolves to get any kind of momentum. You do not want them to do that. Now, going into Game 5, they're going to have home court advantage, and then that would force them to, if they win Game 5, then they would have to play in Game 6 in Dallas. Now, if Dallas loses in Game 6, then they would have to play Game 7 in Minnesota, which, again, it's not ideal for the Dallas Mavericks. So they need to close this series out as soon as possible. And they just have to hope that Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns don't have that kind of game that they had previously, because that was the biggest reason why they won. So the game is set to start at 8:30 tonight on TNT. So be sure to tune into those. Be sure to tune into that game and to tune into everything else that because that is going to be happening in this game, along with the halftime show, because as I said before, Inside the NBA on TNT, it's going to be done for I don't believe next season, but I think the season afterwards. And, like, with that in mind, it's going to be really sad seeing Chuck Kenny, Shaq, and Ernie, they're all going to be broken up. I never thought that this four-man show was going to come to an end, and the sun is not doing justice for me right now. But really, it's a really sad day. It's really sad when that, knowing that that's eventually going to come to an end. But similar to how this segment is going to come to an end right now. So now we will go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk about a potential Trae Young trade because of the the Atlanta Hawks having the number 1 pick in the draft. Again, it's a possibility that they could look to trade one of their players. But aside from that, we're going to go right ahead into that third segment right after this short break, so stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. In this third segment, we are going to be talking about a potential Trae Young trade that could be happening in the near future, given as how the Atlanta Hawks have the number 1 pick in the draft. So I'm looking at this article real quick, and by Alex Lord, he's talking about the possibility that the Hawks could shake up the roster. So the 2 biggest dominoes are easily what they do with the number 1 pick and DeJounte Murray or Trae Young trade. So they have the number 1 pick in the draft, and it seems that this French kid Alex Sarr is going to be the favorite to land that number 1 spot. So again, he's a 7-foot Frenchman. I have no idea why these people from France are so tall. Victor Wembanyama. But like, he could be considered, there's a lot of people that think he is going to be the next unicorn in the NBA. Now, unicorn, it means somebody who is super tall but is super gifted at everything on the basketball court. He can shoot. It's like an anomaly. Like, for example, Kristaps, he was the first unicorn in the NBA because, he was just an anomaly. He was a super tall big man, 7'3", that he could play the defense, and he could do the regular things that a center could do with ease, but he could also shoot the ball. And he could do a lot of things with the ball in his hands, which is something that was rare for someone that was super tall. So, looking at this article a little bit more, the more notable decision looming for Atlanta is which point guard will they build around. So it's like they'll get Sarr off the number 1 pick, and then they will figure out which point guard is going to run the offense with Sarr. So they're sort of struggling exactly like which guard they're going to pick. A Trae Young trade would net more assets in return to build around his counterpart, but he's certainly the better player of the two. So the Hawks will have to weigh the possibilities against each other. It's like, if you trade Trae Young, you're going to get a lot more pieces, but you're going to get a weaker point guard. If you trade DeJounte, you're going to get a lot less pieces, but a stronger point guard on your team. So, more recently, a report revealed that clubs may value DeJounte Murray over Trae Young, which I mentioned earlier, like before on a different podcast. But it's not too surprising because, Murray would be cheaper financially and might not cost as much capital in potential trade. And secondly, he's a much bigger point guard that is an asset defensively rather than a liability compared to Trae Young. Now, he doesn't have the offensive ceiling that Trae Young has, but an acquiring team might not need him to be that number one option if they're trading for DeJounte. So with that being said, Young is still a superstar regardless of the last couple of seasons. He's basically, like I've said before, he's consistent in averaging at least 25 points per game and 10 assists per game as well. Nearly every club in the NBA would be infinitely better with Trae Young instead of their current point guard, which is saying a lot, but like most of the teams, yes, they would be a lot better off having Trae Young as their point guard as opposed to whoever they have, except for the Knicks who have Brunson, and the Warriors who have Steph, and the Thunder who have Shai, and the Mavericks who have Luka, and let me think, what other team? Oh, the Pacers would definitely be better off with Trae Young as opposed to Halliburton. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. So, because if a Trae Young trade nets Brandon Ingram straight up, like, there's a that's at least what the article is saying, like, the world has gone crazy in this Bleacher Report hypothetical from Zach Buckley. The Hawks give up their best player in exchange for the Pelicans' second best player. Like, so there's growing possibility that they could trade Trae Young for Brandon Ingram, which it would be very odd. Like, I just don't see Trae Young on the Pelicans. Like, I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. And I genuinely think that trading DeJounte would be a much better option. Like, I've said this before on the podcast. I think trading DeJounte Murray for Brandon Ingram and pairing him with Trae Young and the rookie Alex Sarr, that would be a very, very good lineup to have. I really like the lineup. However, I think the biggest thing that they're really thinking about is the lack of defense. Like, because Trae Young and Brandon Ingram, they aren't really known to being, like, defenders like that. They aren't really known to having the defense. But again, like I've said before, DeJounte does have the defense, and that is something that could be considered really, really valuable for other teams. Now, a trade of DeJounte Murray straight up for Brandon Ingram seems more in line with their values. Brandon Ingram is a 6'9" wing. This is what the article is saying. With that can get his own shot, but he's not some superstar. He's made one... Okay, there goes the page just lagging. He's made one All-Star appearance and has never led his team further than the first round of the playoffs, and isn't capable of shouldering the load offensively. Young, on the other hand, has made it to the conference finals and is capable of taking over offensively and is an all-NBA talent. Ingram has averaged fewer than 22 points and about 5 assists in his 2 postseason series. Young, who has been in the league 2 fewer seasons, averages over 26 points and 9 assists per game in 5 postseason series. And what's even crazier is if you take out the series against the Heat in 2022, when Miami blitzed Trae Young without a second ball handler, he is averaging over 28 points and nearly 10 assists in 4 playoff series. And it's like, trading Trae Young directly for Brandon Ingram is a horrible trade. Like, the two just don't measure up. Like, they don't measure up the exact same. So, if you're going to give up Brandon Ingram, you're going to have to give up other assets. I don't think the Hawks are going to accept that trade. Now, DeJounte for Brandon Ingram, that's a totally different story. And, like, it would really, like, again, suggesting a straight-up trade between Ingram and Trae Young, it's, like, it's a completely different. Like, they are not on the same level. Trae Young is up here, and Ingram is, like, right over here. Like, they are not on the same level whatsoever. It would be a really bad trade in my opinion, if they just, directly swap stars. And it would also, I think it would be really bad for SAR if they drop Trae Young, because Trae Young is a very, very good point guard. He can run the pick and roll almost perfectly, and he can create looks for the center so much easier, and it would make SAR's life and him adjusting to the NBA that much easier, in my personal opinion. I genuinely think that Trae Young should stay on the Hawks, and if the Hawks are going, they should not trade him. If they're going to trade anyone, you got to trade DeJounte. It's that simple. There's going to be a lot of naysayers out there. They're going to say, Trae Young, I don't see Trae Young as a 1 or a 2 option. I see him as a 3rd option. That's just not true. I'm sorry to say it, just not true. You know exactly who you are. Not true whatsoever. He is a very solid 1 or 2 option on a team. He can definitely do it. He's almost done it before. He's almost done it being a number 1 option. He was just a couple of games off of doing it, but he almost did it. Now all that's left is for him to get the help that he needs, and if he's provided with that help, he could without a doubt be a number 1 or a number 2 option on a championship team. I have no doubt about it. But with that, we are out of time for this 3rd segment, so now I will go ahead and go into the 4th segment where I talk about Caitlin Clark dropping 30 points and still losing. So, again, I've said that these segments are a little bit shorter than usual. I apologize for that, but that is mainly because I started the show a little bit late, and again, I'm sorry for that. But now we will go ahead and go into the 4th segment where I talk about Caitlin Clark dropping 30 points, which is nothing short of impressive, but unfortunately the team still lost. So I'll be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I apologize for that longer than usual wait. Now, the reason for that is because the Fox app that I'm using, for checking stats, is very, very bad. I'm sorry to say this, but, it is very bad. And the reason why I say that it's bad is because when you're in the NBA, the Fox app, it tracks points, rebounds, assists, steals, turnovers, all the basic stats, and field goal. But in for the Fox app, when you're looking at WNBA games, the only thing that they track for these games, like the only thing, is the team scoring and the team's field goal percentage. So it only calculates the points, the amount of makes and misses. That is incredibly lame for especially now where I want to look at the stats and like everyone else's stats. It is incredibly lame. And it really frustrates me because it's like it took me longer to get this segment ready than usual because I had to try and find all of Caitlin's stats in this game, and the Fox app just didn't give it to me. So, horrible app. It was just, I don't know why they do that, but aside from that, Caitlin Clark in the last game, 30 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. She became the 4th player in WNBA history to reach these numbers in a single game and became the first rookie to reach these numbers in a single game. Nothing short of historic, nothing short of amazing, but she still lost. I don't know how you can blame anyone else. I don't know how you could put the blame on her for her team record and for this loss. I genuinely do not know. It's a similar story to Victor Wembanyama and how, he was playing on a very bad team with the Spurs, but his talent was far above everyone else, and the team was just constantly losing these games, despite the fact that they had Victor Wembanyama on the team. Now, this is a similar story with Caitlin and the Indiana Fever. Obviously, when a team gets the number 1 pick, the team is bad, and they're bad for a reason. And that's why they have the number 1 pick. But you also can't expect the number 1 pick to be able to lift a team up from how bad they are. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to just completely discredit the women's team and women's basketball. They're at a very good spot right now. They're very popular. I love talking about women's sports. But this team, horrible. This team is bad, and it's a whole different level of bad, and it's really it's crazy to me. Just looking at how the team plays. I saw the team play live, and literally just watching that team play, it gave me a headache. It was just bad. It didn't work out. I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but it's just these players, they just are not it. They think that they are, but they're not. And their placement on the court is bad. Their ball movement is also bad. Their pick and roll is bad. Their defense is bad. Everything about them is just bad. And especially this one woman, Kelsey Mitchell. I am sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but she is bad. She is just not good. You need to, the teams, she shot 5 for 15. She was awful tonight, and she's been awful for a majority of the time with the Fever, and she's robbing Caitlin Clark of shot attempts. She took 15 shots in this game for just 15 points. Why are you taking that many shots? Why? I just don't. I don't understand why you're taking this many shots when you have Caitlin Clark, who literally dropped 30 and still lost. It's and I don't mean to be, I'm not trying to just be mean just to be mean. It's just when I watch them play, they do so much questionable things with the ball. It's similar to how when Victor was playing on the Spurs. It's a direct comparison. You'd have these other players on the team just do random stuff with the ball and try to do everything themselves, when in reality they could just give the ball to Victor, drop it down low, and let him do what he needs to do to score. But they do too much. It's doing too much is going to hurt your team, and that woman does too much. I'm sorry to say it, she does way too much, and it hurts the team more than it helps, and it's really disgusting to me because when I was watching that game when the Fever were playing against the Liberty, she was trying to find an open shot. She was just doing all these tween crossovers, behind the backs, step backs, and like taking contested layups. And it's like she was doing all these dribble moves, but she wasn't creating any kind of space with those dribble moves. And then if it leads to her taking a ridiculously contested layup, and even then she would take an open layup and she would miss it. And I'm just like, why are you even bothering? It boggles my mind. The team really needs to learn how to play with Caitlin Clark as opposed to playing against Caitlin Clark. And I don't know, there's no other way to put it. And I try to be like, as nice as possible, but there is no way. I'm not going to bubble wrap any of these players and say that they played well or they played all right. No, they played bad and they're playing bad. It's that simple. I'm not bubble wrapping anyone for any kind of reason. Now, her shooting, like her field goal, for some, I just don't understand. Like because her numbers, they don't look bad, but it's like every time I see her play, it's just, I don't like it. Maybe it's because, I am a very huge Caitlin Clark fan, and it's the fact that she's not getting enough touches that's aggravating me. But at the same time, it's like, why is she not getting as many touches? Why? And another problem that I have with the team is how they play. It's how they play with Caitlin Clark. It is not ideal. Now, the reason why I say this is because, whenever a screen is set for Caitlin, the teams are immediately doubling her. They are straight blitzing. They're doubling her every single chance that they get, which forces Caitlin to pass. But for some reason, the roller does not put herself in a good position to either score or make a play for somebody else. Like, usually, like I've said before, when you run a pick and roll, you either roll down to a spot on the block, which will bring help defense, thus making an easy look for somebody in the corner, or you pop out farther away from the double team and continue swinging until you get a wide open three. And they do none of that. They awkwardly stand in a very awkward spot. They don't space the floor. They stand a little bit closer than they should. Like, they stand a little bit closer to Caitlin than the spot where they should be standing, if that makes sense. And it's annoying to watch because it's like, put yourself in a spot to score. Like, or put yourself in a spot to, like, play good defense or do something of that nature. But they just don't. And I don't like it. I don't like how they're just not helping the team whatsoever. It's really hurting them. And that's really, like, there's really not much that needs to be said, aside from the fact that, dropping these numbers it's crazy. And being the first rookie to drop these numbers is nothing short of impressive. But with that, we are out of time for this fourth segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the fifth segment, where I talk about the Clippers former owner, Donald Sterling. So I'll be right back after this short break. And we are back with the fifth segment, Talk in GSMC podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And Jesus Christ, I messed up that intro badly because I have no idea why. But in this fifth segment, we are going to be talking about this new series that's going to be premiering soon. Max, I'm not entirely sure. I have to go check again. But it's going to be about the Clippers' previous owner. Actually, no, it's going to be on FX and on Hulu, excuse me. It's going to be called Clipped. Now, this is going to be a story inspired by the Clippers' former owner, Donald Sterling, who was banned for life from the NBA. And I will go ahead and explain, just give a brief little history of Donald Sterling and his, many problems with certain people that again you guys will understand directly after the segment. So for those of you who don't know, Donald Sterling, he was the owner for the Clippers for arguably the longest time, up until 2014, I believe, and he was banned for life in the NBA. Now, I'm looking at this article. I actually have several articles pulled up. I'll look at the ESPN article first, since, that one is, a little bit more accurate in my opinion. So, it was morning of Game 5 of the Warriors' 2014 first-round playoff series against the Clippers. 4 days earlier, TMZ had published voice recordings of the Clippers owner, Donald Sterling, making racist statements to his yes, that's how you pronounce the name, throwing the NBA into a tailspin. When Myers called his boss with a status report, he told him in no uncertain terms, "These guys are going to walk off the floor," Welts recalled. He was with the team that morning and said the vibe around the team, maybe both teams, was that if this doesn't go the way the players want it to go, that they could walk out on the floor and then walk right off and not play the game that night. Donald Sterling had been a blight on the NBA for 3 decades. There were dozens of incidents that could have been grounds to kick him out of the league, but this tape was something else. This is a quote. "In your lousy effing Instagram, you don't have to have yourself walking around with black people," Sterling told Stiviano. "It bothers me a lot that you want to promote broadcasts that you're associating with black people. Do you have to?" At one point, Stiviano asked Sterling, "Do you know that you have a whole team that's black that plays for you?" And he responds, "Do I know? I support them and give them food and clothes and cars and houses. Who gives it to them? Does someone else give it to them? Who makes the game? Do I make the game or do they make the game?" The NBA players, they were appalled. They threatened to boycott playoff games if new NBA Commissioner Adam Silver didn't get rid of Sterling quickly and definitively. And LeBron James, who played for the Miami Heat at the time, "There's no room for that in our game." And he said the morning after the tapes were released, "Can't have that from a player. Can't have that from a player. We can't ever from an owner. We can't have it from a fan," and so on and so on. "It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Hispanic, or whatever the case may be. We can't have that as part of our game." Silver was less than 90 days into the job, and he had a full-fledged crisis on his hands. The players were on the verge of shutting down the league in protest, and the threat was far more credible than anyone knew at the time. I was all in, shut down the whole season, which was Andre Iguodala said. Andre Iguodala was all for it. Maybe that was too far, but as far as that game, that day, you can reschedule it. You gotta sort this thing out, because there's some deep-rooted stuff with him that had to be addressed. The Clippers, the Warriors, the NBA, It was uncharted territory for everyone. No team had ever refused to start a game in the NBA before, never mind the playoffs. It would have been an incredible statement. If we didn't play, Jamal Crawford said, who was on the Clippers at that point, I think that honestly it would have outlived us. They would be talking about that while we're not here anymore. It's never happened at that magnitude, at that level. And if the Clippers and Warriors boycotted one game, what would happen to the rest of the playoffs? That's sort of been like, the stipulation around the entire situation with Sterling, and what the basis of the story is going to be for the clipped show that's going to be on Hulu. Now, I'm looking at the Bleacher Report article. Silver announced that the NBA concluded its investigation with the belief that it was Sterling's voice on the audio tape. Sterling confirmed it was his voice on the tape via ABC News. Silver made it clear the league stood together in its opposition of the owner. And finally, Silver expressed the hope that no long-term damage would come to the league or the Clippers organization via Adam Zagoria of SNY.com and Steve Kyler of Basketball Insiders. Following the announcement, messages of support came in from around the league. NBPA Vice President Roger Mason said that players were prepared to boycott playoff games, yada, 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 basically everything that I just previously said. And the Clippers changed their team website following the news, issuing a statement of unity before Game 5 versus Golden State via ESPN Sports Center. The organization also refused to issue a statement via Markazi on April 25th. TMZ Sports reported that it had Sterling on tape chastising Stiviano for associating with black people. So it's really like, it's dumb things. Like, it's really just like the racism that he was displaying. It was just nothing for this league. And now I'm looking at this ABC News article about the incident. He was fined $2.5 million for his racist comments and was forced to sell the team to the new owner, which is excuse me. So now that he sold the team, which is honestly like, is that really a punishment? Like, I'm sorry to say it, but like, is that really a punishment? Because forcing someone to sell a team for billions of dollars, that just means that you're just making billions of dollars, and it's like, it's not really a real punishment for him, at least for Sterling. I really don't think, like, I thought that punishment was absolutely hilarious, because it was like, he was banned. Obviously, he should have been banned, but then he was forced to sell the team for like $2 billion. Like, I'm looking at yes, exactly. He was forced to sell the team to Steve Ballmer for $2 billion. Like, wow, such a punishment. He says racist remarks, and boom, $2 billion shows up in his bank account. That is, it's like you can't make that up. You just can't make that up. Is there something on my camera? Hold on just 1 second. Let me fix that. Yeah, I don't know what that was. There was something on my camera, and it was blocking the view. I apologize for that. But he sold the team for $2 billion. Like, whoa, such a crime. And this is what the Hulu series is going to be about, because I guess it's going to like shed some new light on the entire scandal and like every other problem that he had with the Clippers. So here are the key allegations. The audio recording, male voice identified by Stiviano and the NBA as Donald Sterling, chastising Stiviano for posting pictures of herself with black people on her Instagram. Stiviano points out that she is black and Latina. Sterling says that it is fine because she can seem like a, quote, delicate white or delicate Latina girl. This is all on ABC News. Like, this is from the article, so, like, don't quote me on that. That is absolutely disgusting, the fact that he even had that thought in his head. Stiviano's lawyers released a statement saying that the audio tape was part of a 1-hour recording and confirmed that the voices were that of Stiviano and Sterling. They denied that she made the recording public. Next accusation, the team released a statement saying Mr. Sterling is emphatic that what is reflected on that recording is not consistent with, nor does it reflect his views, beliefs, or feelings. It is the antithesis of who he is, what he believes, and how he has lived his life. And another thing, Donald Sterling has faced allegations of racial discrimination in the past. In November 2009, he agreed to pay a $2.7 million settlement to settle allegations that he refused to rent apartments to Hispanics and blacks and the families with children. In 2011, Sterling won a lawsuit brought by former Clippers general manager Elgin Baylor over harassment and discrimination claims. This is all on ABC News. All these accusations are on ABC News. In a lawsuit filed by Sterling's wife, Rochelle Sterling, she claims that her husband began an affair with Stiviano at the 2010 Super Bowl, and the pair have been together since. It's very odd for me, because it's like, how are you going to say that, how are you going to be so prejudiced, or I guess, allegedly prejudiced towards all of these? Actually, you know what? It's not even allegedly, because this is already confirmed. How are you going to be so prejudiced against these kinds of people, but at the same time have a wife that is part of those kinds of people? It's so hilarious to me, because it's like, what? The amount of hypocrite, the hypocritism is ridiculous. And yeah, that's really all that needs to be said about this segment. So with that is going to be the end of the show, and that is going to be the end of the 5th segment. That's all that I have to say about that. So thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, please remember to use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment to get your comments recognized. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for this podcast today. Thank you so much. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.